So I have 20 years experience in digital, 16 in accessibility and 15 in SEO. I also do usability and some other things. So today we're going to talk about core updates. Now, for a lot of people, this may be new information for you. There's a lot of misinformation out there on what core updates are and what they do. I've recovered sites from core updates, so this is what I've found. Because they're core updates, they're quite broad, so you might hear people have found other ways to recover, but these are the things that I've seen when I've worked on it. So we're going to back up a little bit because it's important to understand a little bit of the history. So why does Google have algorithm updates? Like, why do you wake up one morning and have most of your traffic gone, right? So today, in half the world's population uses the internet every day. And since we've all been locked down for 3 months, I'm probably a lot more than that right now. So Google has a lot of information to process. So it processes literally trillions of queries a year, and it has indexed billions of websites. So if you think about how they have to react to things at that scale, algorithm updates are important because today there are already 3 billion searches in Google. And that means Google, for every time someone types something in, returned a result within seconds. And that result has to be, accurate, and it has to return a good site. So they use the algorithm updates to control the types of sites that come back. In 1 second today, there were 82,000 Google searches. So this is really big information and big data, and you can't just crawl the web and just, hope you get the right thing back. So because Google search results are not their product. Their product is the sites that they bring back. So when Google brings back a site, if they were all spammy sites, and if it was all casinos or something, then you might not think Google was a good search engine. And Google's primary focus is to sell ads, because they still fund 85% of everything Alphabet and Google does with the ads that they do on search engines. So it's really important that the sites that come back are good sites. So the original algorithm focus was web spam. And web spam, the first web spam algorithm was November 16th, 2003. If you've been in the industry for a while, you may have heard of this one. If not, this might be new to you. But it was called the Florida update. And they did it during the Christmas season. And it was the very first update that just came through and just wiped sites out. And people woke up and they literally didn't have any more traffic, and it was the holidays, and so they lost all their business for Christmas. That filter, that update moved up to 98% of previously listed sites. So if you think about that, that's like 98% of the internet at that time that they were indexing was removed because of whatever issues they removed it on. Because they did it during Christmas, Google decided after that they would never do that again. So they promised all website owners that after that, they would never release an update like that between basically Thanksgiving and like the last shipping day. So that was the Florida update. And so why did they do this? Well, spam. So back then there was a ton of spam. Like, it was really easy to rank in Google. You just threw a bunch of white text on the background with your keywords and you could get to the top. So there's a lot of sites that people really prefer not to get. There's a lot of porn and stuff like that. We're getting into the search engines. It's called spam dexing at the time. So again, remember, Google's product is bringing back good websites, quality websites, websites that inform you, websites that meet your search intent, not porn and casinos and pills, which was most of what the web spam was. So these are all the original things in the web, or most of the things in the original web spam algorithms. And some of these are still around today. Keyword stuffing, link farms, guest blog spam. That's been around since, the early 2000s. These are not new things. Some things people may not know, like article spinning was when people, before we had machine learning and they had scripts that would create content. Content usually is pretty bad. Now they have AI that makes content that's almost indistinguishable from real written content. So some of the algorithms for these violations of the Webmaster Guidelines, and the Webmaster Guidelines are written to help stop spam, were Jagger, Penguin. If anyone's around during Penguin, you know how devastating that one was because you couldn't recover until Google ran it again. And the last time it was a 2-year gap. So people lost their sites. They couldn't get their sites back for 2 years. Pirate was, piracy online. Panda was about thin content. Penguin was also an over-optimization penalty, so it wasn't just links. It was basically taking all the webmaster guidelines, and if you were violating those, it directed at that. Over time, it's become mostly about links. And then manual actions were added, like when you get a manual action for thin content or inbound links or something of that nature. So it was all about the spam. And this was called Black Hat SEO. Black Hat SEO is just a tactic to use. I don't use it, but as long as you inform your customer, I don't have ethical issues with it. But Google doesn't like it. All Black Hatters will tell you spam. Google calls spam is really sites positioned above mine, meaning people are just jealous because they can get above your site in the rankings. At least back then. It's a lot harder now. So then Google moved from just web spam to usability. So around 2012, they started rolling out the algorithms for usability. Top-heavy ads, page layout, page speed, mobile-friendly, interstitials, a whole bunch of those. I have a link to all the updates at that time. So instead of just filtering out spam, we're getting rid of pills, porn, and casino. Now they're adding user experience to the site. This is about the time when Google could actually start rendering pages. Originally, they didn't render pages. They just scraped the code. So again, Google's product is the site it serves, and Google needs a lot of resources to crawl these billions of pages and return trillions of queries a year. So better sites, better usable sites means that they leave a lot of the garbage out on the wayside. And then also because people were doing so much ad abuse, I worked with one site that had 13 ads per page, and it took me about 6 months to get them to remove most of them. And then their ads, they earned a lot more per ad, and they got a lot more users because Google rewarded them for not abusing ads on the site. So that was another reason for the usability algorithms. So those are the original algorithms. We have web spam, we have usability. So then Google's like, okay, well, what else do we need? What else can we do to make the results better? And so they moved to site quality, which is what we're talking about, the core updates. So this is Enter 2018, and I actually found a reference back to 2017 for an initial core update, but it was small and most people don't know about it, and I don't think it did a lot of massive damage. 2018 was the large update. So people woke up and their sites were just decimated, and they didn't know why, because these weren't people that were violating the webmaster guidelines. They weren't, their sites were, they thought, usable. They had no reason to think they were in danger of an algorithm update. And as Google said, oh, we just released these. They didn't give any real information. And that's why there's a lot of misinformation out there. Because they gave so little information, a lot of people have speculated on what they are. But until you've actually implemented and recovered sites 100%, I think it's a lot more guesswork because it's such a broad update, because the core algorithm updates are very broad. So a lot of people looked like this and were, very, very upset because it became a very big controversy online. There were sites that were saying that Google was specifically targeting them because they hated them. They wrote blogs about it. Mercola was a famous one. But the Medic update was a little bit, this is what the sites look like when the traffic got hit, right? You literally would lose anywhere from 60 to 90%. If you're missing like 10 to 30% of your traffic during a core update, you might want to check and see if it's something else, because the core updates tend to be much more devastating than that. It still could be a core update, but it's less likely. So these are all the sites, according to Systrix, that got hit in the initial massive Medic update. Now you'll see that we do have a lot of health sites in the list. We have e-commerce and insurance and finance and travel and business and directory and technology. We have all these sites. And so it wasn't targeted at health sites. It was just because so many people saw health sites that that's who got targeted. That's why a lot of the sites got angry, because they thought Google was trying to move them out of the health space. But that's not actually what occurred. So what we found out is these are your money or your life sites under the quality raters guidelines. And your money or your life sites, according to Google, are something that can affect your health, happiness, safety, or financial stability. So as we can see back on these ones, well, why would e-commerce be in there, right? That's not health or safety, but they take transactions. And so if a site takes transactions, then it can be a safety issue for them. You could get credit cards stolen or personal data. So you'll notice that all these sites, if you go through them, all have something related to that definition of the core update, of the Your Money, Your Life pages. Your Money, Your Life are basically news and current events because, of course, we don't want to have, untrustworthy news, civics and government. All these are pretty obvious. They have another one, though, called Other. They added that. I'm not sure exactly when, but it was in the last few years. And Other is literally their ability to put any site they want in there. So I just put these definitions for you to read so you can read them later, and you can click on the link I have in here when we share this, and you'll see the definitions here if you need them. But Other is the important one because Other was added, and that means somebody I know had like a site where they just have gaming on it, but there's no credit card transaction. It's all free, and they couldn't figure it out. But that's because Google can put any site in there now. They don't tend to, and it still has to be related somehow into an issue. So for that site, the reason the gaming site had a problem was downloads, because even though they didn't do any transactions, you downloaded things, and downloading means you could put malware on somebody's computer. So that fell under Your Money, Your Life sites. Originally, Your Money, Your Life sites was a very small definition of just like health, finance, news, but it's expanded over time and probably will continue to do so. But Google says they don't know what a Your Money, Your Life site is. If you talk to John or Gary, you go on Twitter, you'll see them say this all the time. We don't have a categorization called Your Money, Your Life in the search engine, in the ranking factors. And they're probably right. So, well, most likely right. They are right, but they're probably telling us the truth is what I meant to say. So entities is just a fancy word for noun. For anyone who gets confused, like what is entities? Entities just means that Google understands that iced tea is iced tea, coffee is coffee. They understand what a noun means, and they try to determine relationships. So apple pie is apple and pie, and the nodes in the knowledge graph tell them that apple pie is related. So Your Money or Your Life is actually addressed at the query level. So on the sites I've worked on, you can usually identify where the major issue is by looking at the queries that have dropped, because they can tell what a Your Money or Your Life query is. So they may not know that your site is a medical site, but they will know that when people come to your site, or the intent that matches your site is about, let's say, COVID. And so they would know that this is an important query, Your Money or Your Life query, and they address it on that site. So again, what are core updates? Our core updates about eat. This is a big thing that you'll hear. Core updates are about eat. The truth is that there is no such thing as an eat score. Google doesn't have that. So what is EAT? Well, EAT is a set of measurements used by the quality raters to determine when they do changes. Google runs them through the quality raters, and they know what a good site is. They use EAT as an acronym to dumb down some of the algorithms for the quality raters so they can determine what's a good result set. And then once they get all those back from the quality raters, they determine whether they should roll the update out or not. So EAT is not a ranking factor. You have no EAT score. Your site is not measured by something Google defines as EAT, and quality raters rate algorithms, never your website. So you never have to worry that a quality rater is like looked at your website and marked it down. So these are big clarification points, because there's a lot of people out here who say like, oh, you need your EAT, and you need to improve your EAT score, and you need to add to your EAT, and EAT's something in the quality raters guide. It's not anything that Google uses as far as ranking your website. So EAT represents, according to John and Gary, many ranking factors: expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. But Gary has said at 2 conferences, it's mostly inbound links and citations, which makes sense because Google used PageRank for many, many years as their trust factor. So that would be if a site gets a lot of good links, they're linked to from the New York Times and the Washington Post, there's reason for them to trust your site. That hasn't changed. So although it represents many ranking factors, little algorithms, it's still mostly about these 2 things. And then what the other part of the core updates are, according to John, are query relevance and site quality. So core updates are basically about these 2 major items: query relevance and site quality, especially including technical. So let's go over what meta and core updates are not. They're not accuracy of content. Google doesn't look at that. They do for featured snippets use consensus of content, but they specifically state in their documents online for featured snippets that they never use consensus or accuracy for the search results. So you don't have to believe me, you can look at it up on Google. Authorship, unless you're a news site, authors, credentials, bios, they're nice to have. I wouldn't say don't have them if you have content that has good authors, and they're great for your users. So remember, we're talking about ranking factors today, core updates. There are things that are good for users that aren't in the ranking factors, but just make your site more sticky. So if you have good authors who are writing content, make sure you put in a nice bio about them, especially if it's your money or your life content, finance. You don't want to read a medical article by someone who's, not in medicine. So things like that, but they're not part of the core updates. Linking out has nothing unless you're, you can get a manual action for that if you're not properly doing your no follows on sponsored content or your UGC content, but you just general linking out. You can link, there's a thing out there that says you can't link to bad sites or low quality sites because Google looks at that. Well, then Snopes wouldn't rank for anything because they link all the time to horrible sites. So that's not what they're looking at. They're just, when they're linking out, they're just making sure that you're not passing page rank to sites that you shouldn't. Links to certifications, there's no way for them to scale that. You have to think whenever someone says something is a factor in an update, how would they scale it? Not just here in the United States, but across every country in the world, across every language, across every dialect, across all types of information. How would that work? So because algorithms are very broad, algorithms have to deal with trillions of queries. So they're not written specifically, usually, unless it's like Google local for, just New York, right? So links to certifications, that wouldn't make sense because most countries don't have the same certifications. Even most states don't have the same certifications. Known brands, that's, Google likes brands that are well known because it makes their results good, but they don't favor them. They just do better in the search results because the ranking factors are good for big sites. They get a lot of links, they have good content, that kind of thing. Reviews can be part of other items, but they're not part of the core updates. I've also heard swear words in your comments. Google doesn't care about that. Tone of your content, like it just has to be neutral. Google doesn't care about that. If you imagine like every opinion piece ever written would never rank if Google cared about tone of content. Schema is really great for Google to interpret what your site's saying, your topic. So the natural language processing that Google uses is not full. It can't understand me like I'm talking to you right now. Your brain just automatically interprets the words. You know what I'm saying. Hopefully, you can understand me. So schema is the interpreter for where they're at in natural language processing. So it tells the person that, it tells Google that the article is the article, the author is the author, the review is the review. It doesn't have to interpret what's in that content now. It knows that this is review content. So every entity in here will be related somehow to reviews or related to author or related to article. So schema is great for helping Google to better understand your site. It's great for featured snippets. It's great for a lot of things, and you should do it, but it is not related to core updates. What else is not related to core updates is the quality raters guide. So you often see people say that the quality rater guide and EAT comes from the quality raters guide, that this is how you know what Google wants in a site, like authors. So in the quality raters guide, it says that you should have an author and an author bio. There's also a line in the quality raters guide that says to the quality raters, because they're trying to describe top quality sites to them, that they don't have to have an author, that the author's nice to have, but it's not required. So the quality raters guide is not for SEOs. It's great to know what a quality site is, what Google's looking for, as far as what they're trying to surface. So the quality raters guide just describes the types of sites that Google tweaks the algorithms to try to surface. So if you never knew anything about SEO and you took that quality raters guide and you did everything in it, great. You're probably going to have a top quality site that Google's going to, to lift as long as you have links and other things. The problem with that is, though, if you're somebody who got hit by one of these updates, you're going to think maybe because it's in the Quality Raters Guide, you need to hire an expert at $100, $200 an hour to write all your content. But you don't, because Google doesn't require that. And that's not a factor, a ranking factor. That is just part of what Google's trying to surface with these tweaks to these core updates. And it even says here, so you don't have to believe me, this actually comes from Google, that the Quality Raters follow strict guidelines that define our goals for search algorithms. So what's in the Quality Raters Guide is the goal, the sites they want to surface, the quality of sites they want to surface. But not that you should do all those things if you don't have an endless budget to spend. It's a great guide for understanding quality. It is not an SEO guide. There are ranking factors that are represented, but there are ranking factors that there are things in there that have nothing to do with ranking factors. Now, they may be good for users, and if you have the money, great, spend it on that. But for people that have core update issues, a lot of times they've come to me and they're like, I spent $50,000 on content and I haven't recovered. And I had it all rewritten. And I'm like, was your content poor before? And like, no, it just didn't have an expert. And I'm like, well, Google doesn't know whether a person's an expert or not. So that's why you haven't recovered. And then we go on and do an audit and find out what's really wrong. So is a QRG useless for SEO? As I said, no, it's a great way to know what types of sites Google's trying to surface. The Quality Rater Guide, for anybody who doesn't know it, should get it, because it even describes page layout. Like, where should your content be? How should it be laid out? How should your content generally be written? But don't take everything in it as something you have to do. It's just how they're defining quality sites. And again, we've already talked about this a little bit, but you don't want to waste time and money when you have a core update issue because you've lost 70, 80, 90% of your traffic on something that's not going to help you recover. So many items in the Quality Raters Guide have no effect on rankings, and they won't help you with the core update recovery. So again, back to core updates. The hint is in the name core. What is a core update? A core update are core ranking factors, the ones that have been around forever for the most part. Remember we talked about earlier that you have the web spam algorithms and the usability algorithms, and now we have a quality algorithm. So core updates are a quality algorithm, and what they're doing is they're looking at core ranking factors. And that's all kind of not as exciting, but it's just kind of standard, but that's what it is. So if you go to this page in Google, and I have a link on another page here, it's how search works, how the algorithms work. And basically Google's looking at the meaning of your query. Do you meet query intent? Does your content have the information in it that someone's looking for? The relevance of your pages. So do you have topical relevance? So are you writing about coffee and then suddenly writing about motorbikes? Well, there better be a reason why you have both those things on your site. Quality of content. Is your content written well? It doesn't have to be written by an expert. It doesn't have to be a certain length, although studies do show that about 1,200 to 2,500 words are best for long form content. But I've worked with sites that had very little text in their content because that was appropriate for that site. So never artificially inflate your content. Do write it well though, and don't skimp if there is room to write more. But don't feel like if you have some pages that have a paragraph that you're going to be dinged for that. You won't. You do have to have content on the site though, otherwise you can run a thin content issue. But that's not what this is looking at. And then usability of web pages. So how usable are they? And then there's one other, and we'll get into that as we move forward. But these are basically what Google's looking for in a site. But these are related to ranking factors. And these are related to the natural language processing, the meaning of your query, and search intent. So core updates are really boringly simple, except complex at the same time because they're so broad. Because if you have all the core ranking factors, there's many we don't know about even. But there initially were 250 main ranking factors. Now the estimate is 500 plus thousands of sub-factors. And they run hundreds of thousands of tests a year. So it is simple on its face, but complex in depth. So basically what Google's doing is it's tweaking the core ranking factors on these core updates to better surface the quality, the type of sites, and the quality you see in the Quality Raters Guide. And so it is a quality update. So tweaking core ranking factors to better surface the types of sites you see. So when someone says like all these sites had this in the page layout or this in the accuracy, that's because Google was trying to surface those, but Google wasn't writing ranking factors to surface those. They're using the core algorithm, the core ranking factors, they're tweaking them. And then what they're doing is having the quality raters go through and determine how well that test went. And the major core updates that we know are rolled out, because they roll out minor ones too that we don't know about, is adjusting at that level. So this is actually from Google. And I asked about a lot of the misinformation I was hearing, and my theory on it. And basically Google, said this is correct. And what I said was, Google is not looking at content accuracy or using consensus of data or credentials of authors. However, they're working with current and existing quality and ranking signals to help pull back sites that are more aligned with what would be most likely accurate in relation to your query. Would that be correct? And Google said, yes, that is a fair summary of what he had already said and what they are. So how do you recover from these? So what Google loves to tell you is there's no fix for these. You can't do anything. Things just change. Your site isn't relevant anymore. Same boring answer, just write better content. It's all Google's answer for the last few years. Just write better content. And what content is really, really important? Good content is really, really important. There's so many other things that are equally important. Site structure, page speed, technical qualities. Are you putting in titles, descriptions? I see people that leave those out all the time now. There's a lot more than just content. So if your site looks like this, don't worry. Don't listen to Google. You're not unfixable. If a site went up and you went down, they did something you didn't. They're more relevant for the query, or they're easier to crawl. Their page speed is faster, something of that nature. Because remember, core ranking factors are quite broad, so it's going to be something specific to those, but it may be not easily detectable on the surface. So core updates are about distance from perfect. How close or far away from the core ranking factors? Have we done well on these or not? And so like with anything you do, whether you're recovering a site, future-proofing, regular SEO, it's the distance from perfect you are from those algorithms on how well you're going to do on the core update algorithm. The interesting thing I found on the sites that I have worked with and the sites I've recovered is the issues are glaringly bad. They have been on the site for years. Now, I don't think this is true for everyone, but for all the sites I've worked with, some of these have been on the sites for 2, 3, 5 years, and they had some of their best traffic ever. So Google wasn't, for whatever reason, on those query types, pumping up certain core factors. So one site I had a 2-minute average page load for 3 years where it had its best traffic. And then it got killed in a core update, and we found out down the 2-minute average page load. And we fixed that, and we fixed an image load issue, and now they're back 100% after 2 more core updates. So that's often something that's glaringly on the site, but don't ignore it if it hadn't had a negative effect before, because for whatever reason during these core updates, it can have a very strong effect and never bothered the site previously. So check the site issues for core ranking factors and then fix, right? That's so simple. There you go. That's it. We're done. We're not. But again, remember, core updates are boringly simple yet complex. So if somebody comes up with a theory of, X, Y, Z, and you're like, I've never heard of that before, it's not related to the core updates. The core updates are, like we said, your core ranking factors being tweaked to provide better websites. So as we talked earlier, they're about query relevance and site quality. So query relevance also includes user intent and something called query shifting. So one site I worked with, they had a lot of traffic for nightshade vegetables. And nightshade vegetables was a core term that was responsible for 1,300 other search terms on their website. And 6 of those related terms was responsible for 60% of the site traffic. And they all went to that one page for nightshade vegetables. Google shifted the query to nightshade's vegetable list. That is a much less searched query. And so they lost all the traffic for the ones that went to the original page, original query. And it was on 6 terms, 6 main terms. So you always want to check one of the first things, because it will also indicate technical issues or quality issues of other types, is to see where your queries have moved. Have you lost on all queries? It's not usually likely in a core update. Usually in a core update, you'll find a set of queries that have dropped, or a set of queries that are in a structure of the website that have dropped. So And it's not always present. Query relevance isn't always in play, but you want to check there first because you don't want to go looking at everything else if you found out you shifted from nightshade vegetables to nightshade vegetable list, because then you can just write content for nightshade vegetables and then you can recover the site. So other thing, overall site quality, technical is super, super important. Links, maybe, maybe not. There's a lot of mixed data out there, but it can't hurt to check your link profile and make sure you're not being hit by Russian porn spam. That actually is way more common than you think right now. And content quality. And you just, of course, always want to make sure you write good content. That's just the norm. The reason technical first is Google cannot crawl your pages properly. It cannot get through your site. It can't index your content. Nothing else matters, right? So if they can't download your site right because you have a JavaScript error, if you have canonical errors, if you have page speed that's so slow Google dumps before they finish loading the page, whatever it happens to be, technical first, always first, after you check your query shifting, to make sure that Google can get through your site. Because if they can't get through your site, nothing else is going to help you. I can also say on almost every site I've recovered, there was a massive technical issue. So some also had other, like some query issues, but all of them had massive technical issues. Page speed issue, canonical issues. One site didn't have a site structure, which is also an important thing. So I did a Screaming Frog crawl the site, looked at their forced crawl diagram, and found out that 90% of their pages were sitting off the root. So Google, because it uses natural language processing now and entities, nouns, to try to determine your content and what it's about, if you don't have any site structure, you're not telling Google what your content's about. It's just a bunch of pages. So, so on query relevance and content quality, you want to check Search Console for query drops. Use Search Console and not another tool, because the other tools are not completely accurate, and Google Search Console is 100% what's coming into your site. Many site drops, like I said, are on a few terms. That few terms may be responsible for thousands of other queries, but literally when I dove into these, there was 5 to 10 queries that caused the problem. And usually on a site, we think that we have this big, width and breadth of queries coming to our site, but a lot of times, a lot of the traffic is really the result of just a very few core query types. Also, are your pages relevant for the entity searched? Like when it moved from nightshade vegetables to nightshade vegetable list, then she'd have to create a hub page for nightshade vegetables, which she didn't have, and so that she would get that query back. So make sure you have the entity searched. And then, is your content meeting user intent? So maybe you had a query before, a featured snippet you shouldn't have. So check those and make sure you just didn't move because it wasn't really related and you were just getting extraneous traffic. So again, core updates are about distance from perfect with their core ranking factors. So core ranking factors, remember, web spam, usability, and quality. These are where all the core ranking factors lie in these spaces. And Google has a lot written about how it actually has ranking factors for page speed. It has ranking factors for content quality, right? Not content accuracy, but content quality. It can tell, like, is this a paper that's written for an academic institution? It uses a reading scale to see what level the paper was written, what level the document was written at. So you definitely want to make sure that you're covering the core factors that are in these algorithms. And these represent many algorithms, but you can get this information from the Webmaster Guidelines, and Google's Guide to SEO are really good. And then remember how search works. I would suggest everybody go and read all these subcategories in how search works, and also in here, and really get a good idea of what Google's looking for, because the ranking factors are represented, or query relevance are represented in all of these subcategories at the bottom. So an example of a core update recovery. So I can't give the name of the site just because that's how it is sometimes, but I can tell you what happened. Oh, never mind. I accidentally left the name in. So anyway, I was allowed to be public about it, but I wasn't supposed to promote it. Anyway, so examine.com had a technical issue found through query analysis. Now, they publicly posted on Twitter that they had the core update issue. So a lot of SEOs gave advice, but I did confirm with them that at the time that they recovered, they had only done these things that I told them to do, and they hadn't had a chance to put anything else in. So I do know for a fact that these are the reasons that they recovered. So when I looked through the site, I found that they had 800 pages in two main directory folders. And I looked through those and ran a site crawl with Screaming Frog and SiteVault. You can use whatever tool you prefer. And I found out there are 800 redirect loops on the dropped pages. Well, redirect loops are something Google despises. Google gets a redirect loop. It just means the spider goes like this, and they want out as fast as they can. They detect the redirect loop and they leave. Oddly, these pages were some of their most highly trafficked pages prior to the update. So for some reason, Google was finding the pages another way and ignored the redirect loop issue. They also had an unsupported script that was 5 years out of date for helping with page load times, but now it was creating page load issues. So their average time was around 25 to 30 seconds. So they worked on that and got it to below 12 seconds on average. And I know a lot of people say page speed doesn't work. I promise you, as someone who does site recoveries and technical SEO, page speed is an awesome thing that you want to work on. And I even thought that if you're already down at like 5-6 seconds, it didn't make a difference. I have other SEOs who work in the same space I do who have told me they've made incredible gains just from removing a few seconds, even when they're that fast already. But on these sites where it's 25, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 50 seconds, if you get them down below 10 seconds, I have not had a site yet that hasn't had a significant improvement outside the core updates, let alone in the core updates. So, but we reduced the load times. So we just fixed those things. That was it. Here's their drop, and here's the recovery, and even a little bit better than where they were. So the core update fixes were 3 technical items, or 2 technical items really: page speed and the redirect loops, and removing the module that was causing the page speed issue. So that was it. And he had a hard time believing that it could be that simple, but it can be that simple. I have yet to see a complex set of issues on a core update drop. It's always something, like I said, glaringly obvious, usually on the site for a long time. And when we fix 2 or 3 issues, they get 100% recovery. I have theories about this that I don't have any reason to substantiate, just my own personal feeling. That Google may have overlooked these things before, but indexing the web costs a lot of money. They have one center in, I think it was Kentucky, I'm not exactly sure. They had to build a dam just to provide the water to cool the servers. That's a lot of money. So I think that they are amping up not only to provide better quality results, but also to just ignore sites that hog their resources. This site with its redirect loops and its page load time, because sites that drop like this normally, and all my years of doing this, are like Penguin or Panda, where you've done something wrong. You've tried to scam the algorithm. You've done something Google has specifically said not to do. But that's not the case here. This is just the case of bad technical issues, and the site dropped this much. And so I have a feeling Google just started ignoring sites with these issues. So, but again, I can't substantiate that. That's just my feeling from what I've seen. So if you do those things, do query relevance, and you make sure that you check your site, quality, and make sure your technical is good. Technical, like I said, I've seen on almost every one of these that I've done. And you look at the core ranking factors, you can recover from these updates. They are brutal, so they're very scary, but the truth is they actually can be quite simple to recover. They're just a lot of work, because usually the technical issue or the content issue is so severe that it'll take a few months. They do update though about every 3 months, 3 to 4 months. You'll need to be done with your work about a month or 2 from the update, because Google has to recrawl the sites and reevaluate. So you might not get it on the first new update, but you should get it by the second, as long as you identify the issues. And again, they're glaring. They're not little issues. This isn't like a 8-second page speed versus a 5. These are like 25-second, 2 minutes. Redirect loops, canonicals are wrong. Dr. Mercola went online. He wrote a whole blog about Google, was attacking him and hated his site. Jenny Hazless, and I know I just said her name wrong. She's another SEO that does the same thing I do, and she found that they cut their AMP canonical, so Google couldn't find the site. And a lot of the sites at that time that said that they were hit during the Medic update, either her or I or a couple other forensic technical SEOs would go look at, and we found always some sort of major technical issue. So again, that's not the only thing that causes them, but query shifting, query relevance, and technical are the first three things I always check. So hopefully you found that helpful, and I think we'll transfer over to questions, I think. And that is it for the presentation. Okay, I see there are, okay, are there questions yet? I don't think so. Does anyone have any questions? I'm not seeing any questions,
So, Kristine, there are some questions at the chat.
Okay.
People ask if they can get access to the slides of the presentation.
Sure.
Is it possible?
Yeah, I'll load them on SlideShare and I'll send you the link. You can send it out.
Okay. Yeah. Also, Walt asks, does being a customer of Google, spending money on Google AdWords, have any impact on rankings?
Wouldn't it be great if it
did? Yeah. And if so, how much do you need to spend per month?
Yeah, that's a common thing. It's been around a long time. No, they don't. In fact, the truth is that Google, the web spam team and the ad team are not allowed to talk to each other. In fact, years ago, I found an issue where the ad team was exploiting something in Google search rankings to get their ads clicked on more. So they're not allowed to talk. They're not allowed to talk to each other about these topics. So it's completely independent. The reason I think is perceived is there are big brands that Google has to have in its search results. And so the ranking factors favor making sure that the big brands surface. If you went there and eBay wasn't in Google, you might think Google's a really bad search engine and not use them and go to Bing or something else. So.
Okay. One of the questions is also, when a site just isn't growing, what can you look at beyond basic stuff? How do you think?
Oh, isn't growing?
Yes.
I think that's just a general question, right? Not about the corporate.
Yeah.
Generally, I would check how your links are doing. I am what they call white hat, gray hat. I don't believe in purchasing links because it's too dangerous or risky for your cash register site, the one that you rely on to pay your bills. If you want to experiment with that on other sites, that's fine. But you often need to get someone who does link acquisition. I don't do link building or link acquisition because it's so scrutinized by Google and it's such a specialty. But there are people in the industry who are fantastic for it. And you can do a lot of outreach yourself. You can, I know one person that was doing link building for a client of mine would just get their client featured on a podcast and people would link to their site. So there's, you can write, articles, not guest blogs or guest posts, but I mean like find a place where someone will let you submit industry specific articles or talk about yourself, self-promotion, PR. But there's really creative ways to get great links. That's just not my specialty, but you definitely could hire a consultant and talk to them about doing that.
I see. One more question is, how do you go about finding entities?
There's entities are basically just any noun that Google understands. So it's not, there used to be a really good database called DBpedia, and you could look in that for the original set of them, but Google doesn't populate it anymore. But InLinks is a tool from Dixon, who used to be with Majestic. It's the only tool like this, so I'm not promoting for any reason other than it's good, and it's the only one that does this. But you can put a little script on your site that they give you, and they will tell you what your entities are, and they will help you better internally link by using the script. So it's a really great tool.
I see. One more question. People are very curious, at least two of them. Who are your mentors? Who do you follow for insightful information?
I've been doing this a long time, so we're all kind of friends now. So when I have a question, I talk to other technical SEOs, usually like Alan Blywise or Jenny Hazeless. Trying to think, Barry Adams is really good. I'm in a couple of private Facebook groups with other SEOs, so I often just ask my questions there. But we have a lot of excellent people at this level, and most are very generous with their time. So if you go on Twitter and find SEOs that are active, you can definitely find information. Leda is another good one. Eleanor, I know her, but I can't think of her regular name. Jammer. Oh, I'm sorry. I feel bad. I'm tired. She's Jammer Vox, I think it is. But look, her name's Jamie. You can look her up. She's very good on technical. And just look for people. Go back like 5 years, maybe 6, 7 years at conferences and see who spoke and if they're still speaking now. Those are people that usually know their stuff, right? If they've been speaking for a while and they're at a lot of different conferences, and it's usually a good indicator that there's someone you could talk to.
I see. Thank you. More questions here. Did these changes affect any major companies negatively? How do you think? The core updates.
Oh yeah, they have. I don't know. I think Overstock got hit by one of those big brands. I do know that when we've seen Systrix post who lost, that's a visibility index. It doesn't always mean it's true, because one day my client was on the list and I rushed into work going, oh my gosh, and they were up, not down, because they were measuring different key terms and it was a new site. But generally, big sites have been hit too. Google doesn't, ignore big sites. It's just usually big sites have so many factors that can compensate for other issues, like links,
I see. There is also a question, how is EAT determined for reference websites?
EAT's not a factor. There's nothing that's being determined by EAT. It's core ranking factors. So expertise, authoritativeness, and trust is basically like, how are you linked to? Are you crawlable? How fast is your site? Do you have privacy policies and points of contact? On an informational site, it is good to put in an author bio. I don't know that it's part of the core update. I haven't seen it be that effective, but a couple of us have a suspicion that Google's added Google News, which is a different algorithm, some of their specifications onto the regular algorithm. And that would be like, add a link to an author bio. They don't read the bio and understand what it's about. They just know there's an author, a link, and a bio of the author. So that's a quality indicator to them.
I see. One more question is, I'm seeing sites with good technical structure and really great content, but little to no backlinks ranking well these days. Is this what you are seeing? What's your experience?
You can rank well without a lot of links. I don't know how competitive the queries are. If they're not competitive queries, then, great content can do that. You're not going to stay there if it becomes competitive if you don't have links. Also, you don't necessarily know they don't have links. You may be only seeing what's in a tool, which may be a portion of the links, and also maybe Google may be 3 months ahead of you. So you may not be seeing the links yet that they have achieved. But I would definitely check if it's a site that's beating you on, how are you doing on the query terms? So do a query term analysis, get a query audit, and see, are they in the queries that you're not? Like, are maybe your query is just a little bit different and you could be more specific.
I see. There is also a question partially related to the previous one. In particular, could you let us know why there are so many bad content, no right schema implementation, no right use of headers, etc. medical sites now on 1 to 5 results, while truly good sites went far backwards with the May medic update. How can you comment on
which medic update? From years like last year or from this year?
The speaker didn't specify it, so okay. We can only guess.
I guess. The technical is what I would look at. How are the technical issues on the site that's not doing well? A lot of times crawling is an issue, or page speed's an issue. And also Google is tweaking and experimenting, so sometimes they just surface bad results. I've seen where an update's come through and the chatter is all the spam sites rose to the top, and then they put out a mini update like a couple weeks later and all of a sudden they disappear. So because the core updates are many ranking factors being tweaked, there are going to be times when they just get it wrong.
I see. Here is also the question, how do you conduct content analysis on the site? What are the main areas that you are looking on?
Content analysis, it tends to be, I'm looking at navigational structures, site architecture. Do they have, like, a lot of sites skip the hub page, and by hub page I mean that there's a topic page for a section. So it's like, I'm going to write about my trips around the world, and I don't put in a main page that I link to. So Google doesn't have any topical structure or relevancy there, right? They're like, oh, I went to Egypt and I went here and I went here and here, but they don't have a page that organizes that information. What I always tell people about content is originally, way back in the day when Google was developing Google, like the page, and sorry, just forgot his name. They were developing Google. They went to a library, and I don't know how many people here remember card catalogs, but they were like going to do research on how to organize information, and they saw the card catalog, and they're like, oh my gosh, why are we reinventing what already exists? So a search result, if you look at it, has a title like an old card catalog, has a description like an old card catalog, and then has a URL or a number, a Dewey Decimal number that takes you to the book. And if you want to make sure your site is doing well on content structure and content topic, is if you go to a book, it has a table of contents, which is your navigation, and then it has chapters, and then those chapters might have sub-chapters, right? So make sure that your site is organized like a really well done book. And the easy way to do that is just to put it in like Microsoft Word and do an outline. And you'll find when you do that outline that maybe you left out a topic page for a bunch of topics that are related. So those are the kind of things I'd look at. For actual content itself, as long as you're writing well and you're writing good content, doesn't have spelling errors or punctuation problems, and you're writing to the length that would be natural to write that topic, that's good content. So well researched. If you're doing things that require citations, make sure you cite your research. But otherwise, just writing good content is, and that's such a general thing, like write good content. But we all know when we see content, if it's well written, if it's well organized, if it's well thought out, if it's well logicked, and that's kind of what you need to make sure to do. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, great. Some more questions. What would you say? Is there an ideal word count? Is it myth or true? How do you think?
So Google say there's no ideal word count. I will say that too. There is no ideal word count. But like I worked with one site that did reported on fashion at like celebrities wore. And most of their pages had like one little paragraph. They wore this, they were here, blah, blah, blah. And that site, it's okay to have just a little bit of content, right? They don't really need big content on there. But generally speaking, you have to give Google enough to be able to understand the processor to understand what the page is about. So if I only write 100 words about something, have I really written enough that anyone would really know what it's about if they didn't, weren't a visual, like a human looking at it, right? Oh, I see the page is about coffee and there's 100 words on coffee. Well, that's not really explaining it very well. So you want to make sure that you write naturally what would explain your topic, but don't force it either. There's not ideal. I do tell clients though to do 500 words or more, because 500 words is a good amount of text that Google can discern what you're writing about. For long form content, there are a lot of people that have done studies on it. And ideally they say between about 1,200 and 2,500 words. Also that it drops off after about 3,400 words. And I think the reason is that once you get to 3,400 words, it's really not web content anymore. It's not a page. If you can break your site down into your headers and you start getting into F5s and H5s and H6s on your headers, your header code, you probably have content that's not specific. So the one thing Google loves is specific content. So if I'm going to write about coffee, I have a topic page about coffee, but then I write about, let's say, North American coffee, and that has a page about North America and coffee. And then I write about North American coffees as the sub-pages. So you want to make sure you have a really good structure that way. I
see, thank you. And there is also the question about the May core update. Imeric asks, is there signals like advertising, like thread update used in the May core update? He got a big loss of traffic on a forum in May. One of his clients who had some ads and user-generated content on it, health forum. What do you think?
So without seeing it, I can't exactly tell you, but I can tell you there is in the general core ranking factors, there is a page layout algorithm that checks your page layout. So Google wants there to be relevant content at the top. And a lot of times people do a lot of ads. They put add here, add here, add here, ads down the side, and you don't get to the content until you're halfway down the page. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that, one, you don't want to use more than 3 or 4 ads per page. It actually doesn't make more money. Users get irritated and you burn out your customers. And I know because I've worked with a lot of newspaper sites. The ideal amount's about 3 to 5, and Google's fine with 3 to 5. But don't make it the big sticky ad and the sticky ad and the sticky ad and then like this. The other thing is Google can tell that those are all ads because it does render the page and the page layout algorithm. And so it can see that your content isn't really the focus. So you're not really focusing on the user. So I surface the page. I had another client that had a massive form on the top of every one to like a landing page for PPC, right? They're going to catch everybody who lands on the page. But this is organic search. So people wanted information. So when we took the massive form off the top and moved the content up, made the content a little better, and we moved the form to the side, they regained the traffic for those pages. So you want to make sure this is where the Quality Rater Guide can help. Go read the Quality Raters Guide and what they're looking for in page layout and how main content, it's called the MC, is supposed to be displayed for a quality site.
I see. And there is a more general question about the May core update. What are your ideas about it? What was it?
The medic update?
Yes. The May update.
Oh, the May update.
The May, yes, the latest one.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing. These are all, sorry, I have COVID hair and it keeps getting in my face.
It's okay.
Driving me crazy. My hair is so long now. So the May update's the same. They're all core ranking factors are being tweaked. We just don't necessarily know which ones, but that's not important. If you go to your site that got hit and you do what I said here, and you look for the ones that are glaringly obvious among query relevance and technical issues, and general core ranking factors, page layout, page speed, and you'll see what the problem is usually. I've never found one yet that once I dug into it, didn't have a glaring issue. And if you have a problem, never hesitate, one, to reach out to one of us who call ourselves a technical or forensic SEO. But also, you might also, if it's a client and you have a little room in there for hiring someone, you might want to hire, and I'm not pitching for me, but you might want to hire someone because it's very specialized to recover sites. And so we see sites all the time and we know what brings them down and what actually works to bring them back up. So you're not really having to guess. So.
See, and there is also the question, what are some of the major conferences you would recommend?
Oh, right now, I don't know. I'm only saying that because I don't know what's going to survive the shutdown this year. So Ungagged was one of my favorites. I know there's the technical one in Boston. I haven't been to yet, but people really rave about. Brighton SEO overseas is a fantastic one. PubCon in Vegas has been a great one. Let's see. There's so many now. It's hard to think of them all. And then there's one in Iceland that if you have the opportunity to go is a lot of fun. And you can actually go to Europe and stay 2 days in Iceland, which is about the length of the conference, for free. Not free to stay, but free to get off the plane and back on once we get back to traveling again. So.
Okay, I can see no more questions, just people say thank you, that you are amazing, you are fantastic.
Oh,
thanks for a great presentation and so on. So Kristine, thanks. The presentation is awesome and it's full of so many practical tips and insights into Google core updates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, Kristine. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.